Okay, let's make some kefir, or kefir, however you want to pronounce it. This needs to be made at room temperature. In the summer months, it's obviously going to be doing it quite quickly. This is normally ready within 12 to 24 hours. If you're in the winter time, it could take 48 hours. Now you know it's ready when it's not only gone thick, but hopefully you can see the whey is starting to separate in places, and if you give it a little shake you can also see that this is kind of quite wobbly. So that's what to look for once your kefir is ready. Now how do you make kefir? Well, you have to have what they call a kefir grain, and then you can add milk, or if you don't like using dairy product you can use coconut milk. So where do you get your grains from? Well, you can get your grains from two places. You can either get them from a friend that's already making kefir, and if that's the case you probably don't need this video because they've already shown you how to make it. Or you can get these online, and they'll come in a little sachet, and they're going to be about the size of a lentil, like a size of a dried lentil. So they're very small at that stage, and the kefir you get immediately isn't going to be great. When I say immediately, probably for the first 2 or 3 times. Now there's really no point in ordering a lot of kefir grains. You just need to order enough to do about 250 milliliters to get it going, because they will multiply very, very quickly. So a glass jar like this is absolutely perfect. Now I'm going to show you what the matured kefir grains look like. This is always tricky because I end up splashing it everywhere. And I haven't got the ideal sieve for this because I'm looking for something smaller, but it works for the moment. So we'll just start letting that drain through. The kefir grains will multiply, and they'll multiply quite quickly. So you're only going to be probably looking at about a week to 10 days, even if you start off with the small little lentil sized grains, and you will be at the point after about 7 days where you can actually make around about a litre of kefir, which is all we make on a daily basis because we use it daily. We get through about a litre, and what you'll have to do eventually once the grains start multiplying too much is actually end up throwing them away. But don't throw them away, put them on the garden because they're really good for the garden. You'll need around about a tablespoon of kefir grains for a litre. Now these grains are really nice and they've got quite big. Okay, so before we put the rest through the strainer, actually there's one other thing I needed to show you. So when you start off with these small kefir grains, what you're going to have to do is obviously strain these, but to start with, use something like this. This is a fairly fine mesh sieve. This is a plastic one. Try not to use aluminium. It's not good with most cheese products or milk products. But when they get to this size, you're going to need something with some larger holes because it gets quite thick, and also, as I'll show you now, this is how the kefir grains will grow. That is a very mature kefir grain. If you look at them closely, they look like little cauliflower florets. So what I'm going to do now is fish out the kefir grains. Yeah, there's the grain. I'm trying to get it fairly close so you can see what it looks like. Okay, so we've now got our kefir grains out, and hopefully you can see in here there's no real thick parts left, so we can start straining this kefir and adding the rest to it. The only reason I'm not adding the whole jar is, as you can see, there's holes all around here and the container underneath isn't as big as that, so it would just end up draining down the side or the outside of the jar, which is not what I want. So you're pretty safe not to have any more kefir grains in this now because they do float to the top. So we'll just gradually filter this out and get some lovely fresh kefir. Now while I'm doing this, I'm going to talk to you about the milk that you use. I am, if you watch any of my videos, a raw milk fanatic, raw milk advocate, because I genuinely believe that raw milk was a major contributor in getting rid of or reversing my diabetes, in conjunction with eating a lot of other real food. Now I'm going to stop stirring because this is making a little bit too much noise while I'm talking. Okay, so raw milk, for those that don't know, is just milk that's come straight from the cow and is completely unprocessed. Now if you make kefir with raw milk, look at that. That is beautiful, thick kefir. And that is a perfect base for any protein shake. Anyway, what I'm going to do now is just add the kefir grains back to this jar. And there is actually real no need to clean it out. You're using it daily, and this is a culture, live cultures, so it's absolutely fine. So while I'm doing this, let me talk about milk again. So if you're interested in raw milk, you can check out my other videos. But for the purposes of making kefir, the only downside with using raw milk is because it's unhomogenized and the cream rises to the top, what happens is the cream actually coagulates. It rises to the top of this kefir jar, coagulates around the kefir grains, and it makes it a little tricky to separate the grains because everything's very thick, so it's difficult identifying what's cream and what's the kefir grain. You just got a little bit more challenge on if you do that. Now I actually have made this with store-bought milk, which does go against my principles. However, for the purposes of most people watching this, I think that most people will have to use what's available in the supermarket. And you're still getting a fabulous product with the kefir. So don't worry about that. The other thing that makes it easier to start with is if you buy the supermarket milk, which is homogenized, that basically means the cream has been pulverized and is spread evenly throughout the milk, then it's going to be easier to identify the kefir grains. So I think when you start, it's probably better for most of you to use the regular store-bought milk, even though I do hate saying that. But clearly if you want the best possible kefir, you need to move on to raw milk. But I understand there's a lot of people that may not be able to get raw milk, and there's a lot of people that may not want to use raw milk. So all we've got to do now, we've got our kefir grains in the bottom, is top this up. As I said, 1 tablespoon of kefir grains is enough to make a litre of kefir, or around 2 pints of kefir. So all you're going to do is simply just top this up to around about there for this particular container. You don't want to put a lid on these, by the way, because it will inhibit the growth. They need some air, but just put something on to keep out any bugs or dust particles. And that is ready. Now the other thing I'm going to tell you very quickly is kefir is obviously a live product. If you've got to go away for a weekend or a week or even a couple of weeks, you can keep your kefir grains, and that's where what you will do is put them in a jar with a little bit of milk. Then you need to put the lid on for that and put it in the fridge. If they're kept at a cool temperature, they'll be fine and they will survive. And then when you come back, just go back to doing what you were doing before. Empty out the milk, get your kefir grains, put them in a suitable container, add your milk, and then leave this at room temperature. And don't leave this in direct sunlight. Try and find a little cupboard to put it in. That's absolutely perfect. And one final thing is you can freeze kefir grains, but you will have to reactivate them. And by reactivating, that's that process which you would do if you got your grains online. All you do is it's basically the same process as making it. It's just that what you're going to do over the first 2 or 3 days is discard what you get away, because it's going to be very acidic. But the great thing about this is the more mature your kefir grains get, the better quality kefir you're going to have. Now you can drink this raw. It's a little bit sour tasting because it's a fermented product. It's much nicer as a smoothie, in my opinion. So I'm just going to pop this back in the cupboard now, and really next morning, 24 hours, I'm going to have some more lovely fresh kefir. That's about it on kefir. Very, very simple. There you go. You can get a beautiful daily supply of kefir for very, very little money. And you've made it yourself, you know what's gone into it, and it is the perfect base for any protein smoothie. And if you want a good recipe, look on my look on my other website, look at my other videos, and you'll find the one on a protein shake. So thank you very much for watching.